Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to Samavesh 2024, the most awaited annual Business Academy Conclave. I, Sahil Sukhija from the PGPM batch of 2024, extend a very warm welcome to our distinguished guests, faculty members, industry experts who grace us with their presence today. I appreciate the patience and engagement of our participants throughout the day. Your enthusiasm has made this conclave truly inspiring. Since its inception in 1981, SPJMR has consistently positioned itself as a leader in management education. SPJMR is more than an institution. We are a vibrant community of thinkers, innovators, and leaders. We are proud to be recognized by the Financial Times as the #1 B school. What really sets us apart is our value-based approach towards management practices. We focus on social sensitivity and pursue wise innovation. I am really grateful to be a part of the SPJMR family. Let me take our guests on an exciting journey into the heart of the PGPM program. PGPM is an 18-month management program designed for experienced professionals. We are a cohort of 165 participants coming from industries as diverse as consulting, technology, oil and gas, to name a few. Samavesh is the annual Business Academy Conclave organized by PGPM participants. It is a dynamic forum that brings together notable business leaders, industry leaders, thought leaders, and academia to discuss current business trends and collaborate to create positive impact. Friends, we are gathered here for the Consulting Conclave. The theme for this year's conclave is Navigating the Evolving Consulting Landscape. Before we proceed, can I have a show of hands? How many of you are interested in pursuing a career in consulting? That's the vast majority then. So in that case, let's demonstrate our commitment to our chosen career path by giving our undivided attention to the proceedings. The consulting industry is evolving significantly, driven by technological advancements and changing client expectations. As businesses increasingly adopt technologies like AI, big data, and cloud computing, consulting firms are expected to provide not just strategic advice, but also implementation support. Consulting firms are moving away from a one-size-fits-all approach to a more specialized model. Clients are seeking advisors with deep expertise in their specific industries, such as healthcare, finance, or manufacturing. With increasing awareness of environmental issues, there is a rising demand for consulting services that focus on sustainability and social impact. Firms are increasingly integrating ESG considerations into their offerings. Let us hear it out in greater detail from our speakers without a much further ado. We are proud to have Mr. Prasad Kurup as our keynote speaker and a panelist for today. Mr. Kurup is the Vice President and Senior Partner Asia Pacific at IBM Consulting and leads the generative AI portfolio of services. With over 25 years of experience in the industry, Mr. Kurup has developed expertise in various areas, including digital operations and business process innovation. He also collaborates with clients who have established global capability centers in India. He engages with hyperscalers to harness their solutions in the domain of GenAI and data technology transformation. With a huge round of applause, please welcome Mr. Prasad Kurup. The stage is all yours, sir. Yeah.
Good evening. Sure.
Yes, sir.
Okay, guys. Okay, I know this is the last one, so I'll try and keep it brief. But I think I've got about 30 minutes, so you have to endure me for that duration, and then we go into the panel out there. Okay, so I've got some charts. Typical consulting approach. Keep some charts handy just in case somebody's asked to present out there, right? So I couldn't see the show of hands actually in terms of how many of you don't want to go into consulting. Not wanting to go into consulting. Can you just raise your hands? Look, you all are my future clients, guys. I mean, I need to talk to you. Okay. Because you will join the industries and industries where my client list is. So I'm going to pay more attention on this group. For the others, join the gang on this side, right? Okay. So let me try and take some perspective about what I'm going to do in the next 30 odd minutes out there. I don't have a timer. Let me see if I can keep a timer out here. Okay, good. So classical consulting approach, what do, right? I mean, you take a as-is state assessment. see what needs to be done, do some reflections. So I said, okay, let me also do the same thing out there. So my first section is about doing some reflections, seeing what the journey was. And I also realized that you guys need to tell me when you can't hear me, okay? Okay, good. So I'll follow your cue, especially on the last one. Yeah. If you can't hear me, do tell me. So what I did is, okay, fine, I'll do an as-is assessment, take back some of you in time, okay? And statutory warning, this is time before you were born. I realized that. Okay, so I'll take about a journey about what happened in consulting when we got into consulting and what the journey was. And then get into something more, what I'm doing these days around generative AI. I mean, it's the in thing these days. The trick in valuation is you add a .ai and the valuation goes up tenfold out there. You can see with any startups, add a .ai and you'll find the valuation going up. Very high, strong correlation between the suffix .ai and the valuation index out there. And last section, what we'll do is, I'll try and make it a bit more real in terms of my deliberation with consultants like yours as to what do I see and my personal position on where do I see consulting evolving out there. So 3 sections. With me so far? Look guys, I'm a bit of an interactive person, so I would appreciate if you can give me yes, no, boo at me, I'll take some response, but no response kind of worries me. With me?
Yes, sir.
Thank you for that. Okay, so this is what the thing is. So in a way, consulting, journey for now, and most of you will get into consulting. For the folks who raised your hand, you always get into consulting with a bit of a butterfly in your stomach because you are going to talk to stakeholders who have done something like a decade plus or 2 decades in the industry, and then you're saying, "Yeah, I've just passed out of college. What do I tell them?" There's that butterflies in your stomach and all those things, right? So that's when you kind of listen more in the consulting phase out there. Then the next milestone in consulting actually happens to a few of us. What there was when you realize, yeah, I am also equal with the person out there. By that time, which means you have done about 10 to 15 years in the industry, you realize you're at par with the stakeholder out there. So you go with some more confidence out there. So some of the panelists are actually in that zone out there. And I come from the zone which is like, you are still in consulting and talking to people who are not even born when you pass out of join consulting. So that is the bit of what I call the Dadaji era out here. So this is what I call the 3 sections, right? I mean, a bit of reflections, okay? The new ways of working, what I'm seeing, and this is coming from experiences in APAC. I haven't captured too many from the global one, but APAC will give you a good representation of what's happening in the mature and the developing markets out there. And finally, where do we make it real out there? Okay, bit of a busy slide. Essentially, when we got into consulting, and this was the rate of change, there was a whole industrialization era. We were more into the liberalization that happened in the 92s. Companies were opening up, globalization was happening out there. That was the era that which we got into consulting. And the time when I passed out was the first era when these schools would go get into consulting and try and do things around ERP and VPR. And there was this very famous slogan that we had, obliterate or automate. Okay, so that was the slogan, which means, do you just automate using an ERP or do you obliterate and start afresh out there? So those are the kind of slogans we grew up with. And after that came the era of digitalization, with the whole e-commerce boom. Anything that we touched had to be digital kind of stuff out there. And then now, which is about AI-led, in fact, the latest word I heard this morning from a client in APAC was, it is no longer digital transformation, it is digital revolution. Okay, and I need to figure out what that is now. Okay, but what is also to be noticed is in terms of the rate of change. And if I were to kind of use the market cap as a surrogate, okay, just the rate of change of the market cap, you can see what has been the last 3 years of market cap, only indicating that the change is only getting faster and faster out there. Yeah. But I personally believe there are certain motivating and driving factors behind these changes out there. And if I kind of look back and try and take a very technology view of things, ultimately, I believe it is the availability of computing power, okay, and memory power available that also drives a lot of the industrial transformation. So a lot of this actually you can correlate between the amount of time you're spending on a digital device. It could be any screen, right, from your mobile to your laptops, which has kind of gone up significantly and only expected to go up. You can also see the number of social media users and therefore new business models, new service delivery models coming up out there. The number of connected devices. I think when I did a session a couple of years back, I think it was growing at 25% CAGR, which essentially means now the forecast is about 30 billion devices. So it's like every individual will have about 4 devices wired onto him or her at any point of time. So that's essentially the kind of number of devices that is going to be there. And finally, like I said, while there's more computing power available, it is coming at a cheaper cost. And that is again going to drive. So the next, my view is, that as computing capabilities, so be it quantum, etc., becomes more as a part of a daily life, you will find more transformation getting driven by some of those things out there. Okay, so this is what I call, how the consulting offerings also. So when you join consulting, you also have offerings, right? I mean, you have something like 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 50 offerings in the consulting world that you take to market out here. And this has been also the journey how consulting offerings moved out there. And you will see that from a very personal expertise basis, which means good old days when we started off, our partners would be people who had done 2 decades or 2.5 decades in the industry and then doing consulting, which means there could be nobody in the industry who would challenge them. It was a very experiential-led kind of process out there. And our frameworks were the 2x2s, the McKinsey frameworks. Those were kind of the frameworks we grew up with per se out there. And then I talked about the marriage of ERP with business process reengineering and so on and so forth. And I think in the 2010s is where the whole era of digital revolution came in. So all the exponential technologies, IoT, RPA, automation, etc. came in, and then the companies or industry started moving from purely using an ERP to kind of automating and driving more efficiencies out of the process out there. To what now I'm seeing is you have processes that you actually don't need any individual to also execute out there. So that is where the era of consulting that is there from an offering standpoint. So purely strategy consulting to what is now called as very extreme, deep, data-driven decision-making process out there. Okay, so this is my third reflection. Okay, what were the tools and titles? So when we joined consulting and you are assigned to a particular project, what would we do? Okay, we got our laptops just about the time when we joined the firm out there. So the laptops were used. We should go and beg, borrow, steal about, okay, give me the methodology. Tell me where did you do the last similar project. So the past project became the reference for us, right? Go to the library, hit the methods book, and so on and so forth. So that was also that era of overhead projectors. And I still remember, I mean, I used to kind of do a bit of a photocopying of that so that I could avoid writing on it out there. So those were the eras of original consulting. I mean, sounds like absolutely decade. I don't know if these things also actually exist out there. Maybe even when you open a consulting archival museum, you might still see some of these out there. Then we moved to the era of Google and Excel and Access out there. Okay, and Excel obviously became more and more powerful and very more well used even now as we speak out there. To the days of CPlex, MATLabs, Pythons became. So today, as I'm seeing, okay, you have the GPTs of the world and the bards of the world becoming a natural ally for a consultant, because essentially what is happening is that the knowledge is getting fairly federated into everyone's hand now. Okay, so you are actually as good or as bad as your stakeholder on the other side of the equation. And yeah, I mean the bottom now shows about the compute power, as I call it, in the hands of the consultant only has been growing per se. So, okay, so what do I see going forward? I mean, broadly in the consulting world, which is a balance, and there's an old debate about, are you doing business consulting, or are you doing technology consulting? This is what I believe will happen, okay, in one dimension out there. Consulting services will start getting more and more assets to bring differentiation to consulting. So if you will see a shift left, so consulting firms are on this side, which is what I call the labor-based services. The product-led services are let's say the ERPs of the world, the SAPs and the bonds and the banks and all the core banking, etc. So that's the right-hand side. If my own reflection is as follows, right? So consulting services will start creating more and more assets to help them execute consulting faster. Product firms will actually induce so much of IP into the product that the implementation becomes more and more easy. You don't need a consultant to come and install a Microsoft Excel. Good old days, by the way, there used to be a CD which used to come with a training manual, right? I think I see that era coming back even in complex technologies like ERPs and the others, where these will also have a lot of assets into it. So somewhere I believe the product companies will come towards the right and the consulting will go toward that. So there'll be a lot of asset-based approach in consulting as I see it evolving in the journey going forward. Yeah. Okay, so that's a bit of a reflection kind of a thing. Now let me talk about what am I doing here and now, and what do I see as my own view of what will happen the next 2 to 3 years. Okay. Okay, and what I do is very simple, right? I mean, you just take 2 words and just put it out into the social media, and you will get a good correlation between the two, and you will get all the stories that you need. Consulting is going to get disrupted, which I believe is actually true, and I'm seeing it. But also, industry is also going to get disrupted, and you will find enough and more articles, primarily because of Gen AI. Now, I've been through enough and more fads. I mean, I've been through the ERP era, I've been through the .com era, I've been through the e-commerce era. So some bit of experience is there in terms of sniffing what could be a potential hype and what is reality. Gen AI, no doubt, is possibly at the peak of a hype cycle. Okay, so you will find some waning effect. But I also believe Gen AI, not on its own, but Gen AI with a plethora of other technologies around it, is out to disrupt the industry, which is a market for us, and also the profession, which is where we all come from. So I see this as a very different era, because so far the tools that came in only disrupted one side of the equation. So we were sitting in our own, ivory towers and looking at what's going to come and talking very objectively out here. But this is now an era where my own profession is actually going to get disrupted. So it is a bit of a, you run the risk of losing objectivity in this journey, because now you are also going to get disrupted as much as your customer is going to get disrupted. That is the era we are talking about going forward in the next 2 to 3 years. And enough and more stats. So even I go to consultants, I talk to analysts, and I see a fair bit of data that substantiates the fact that Gen AI per se, with a plethora of other exponential tools, likely to grow and scheduled to grow at a significantly high CAGR, but more importantly, touching all industries. So on the right-hand side is the list of industries and the functions, and you will find a significant impact of Gen AI per se on almost all the functions out here. Is it happening? Absolutely. For the last 14 months, I'm dealing with it, and there's obviously a structured method and a way to handle that as well. Fine. So that said, this is again more credible data, which means the impact of Gen AI on functions. And this is not superficial. This is actual data which essentially demonstrates what Gen AI can do, along with a few of other technologies, in terms of impacting, a particular process that is there. And if anything that impacts a process more than 15, 20, you will say, yeah, I think it's worthwhile to go and test it. But somebody comes and claims it's 40% plus, which means something more radical is going to happen in the process. So from what I call, the pure capabilities that is driving it, just one sec, what I call, from my own point of view to customers, is moving from a plus AI era, which means in the last 4 or 5 decades was about, I do process automation, I'll do digitization, and I'll do some bit of AI out there. So AI did exist. I mean, AI is not a new phenomenon right now. It's been there for the last 10 decades, or 1 decade rather, 10 years in the industry, in the Indian industry, right? But now what I'm saying is you will eventually move from a plus AI era to an AI plus era, which means you will actually start by asking a question, can you use AI to just do the entire process hands-free? And that is what I'm seeing getting impacted in almost like every function that I'm touching upon, both from a front office standpoint, from a mid office standpoint. IT, because it runs in a very controlled environment, is almost getting impacted by 50%. 50%. Okay. And then you have the smarter people, which is where I think you will put a lot of gray matter from this team, is how do you use Gen AI to kind of create more core business transformation? That is where the intellectual power will go in out there. The high risk, high return will be towards the right hand side. This is towards the left is the more safer zone, if you will. It's a bit of controlled environment. I mean, you'll obviously hear some of the horror stories of Gen AI where the bot went rogue and gave some wrong answers and hallucinated and all those things. So companies are still doing a fair bit of work in the middle part because it's under controlled environment, right? So this is what I'm seeing will transform. And moment for a consultant, you have a case for change and you have an evidence of change, you will go that and make that as an offering out here. With me so far, guys? Yes, no, yes. Now it's like the waning effect, right? I mean, earlier the yes was everywhere, now the yes is only on this corner. With me so far? Or? Yes, thanks for that. Just to wake you guys up, okay? Okay, I mean, I think this is, everyone is using GPT now? Yes. Yeah? Do you also use it to solve your cases? Yes. Okay, so yeah, so that's the point, right? So look, when we I mean, I think I don't know, is Benihana still a case in college these days? Benihana? Yes. Yeah. So there you go. So when I actually saw the restaurant, I said, look, do you realize the amount of discussion that you guys have created in back home out there? But the point is, what took so much amount of effort and intense discussion in the class for about, let's say, 4 hours of preparation, burning the midnight oil with some accompaniments that goes along with it, but getting into the class and getting kind of literally analytically and both analytically and otherwise getting butchered by each other, okay, and coming out with an aha moment, oh yeah, this is the way. I mean, the question is, how does academia now change to create the same experiential effort, because now you also have all of the answers available in whichever slice and dice you can do out here. So that is one dimension, which I believe is a more easier use of Gen AI. The very primitive use of Gen AI, if I may use that word. But imagine, Okay, all of us had our best professors, had our best top-notch guy person who would come and crack a case study for us. Imagine if that level of experience is now available, okay, and through a very simple wiring available for you to ask the question along with a GPT with some bit of fine-tuning, etc. Imagine what experience it creates. Then the question comes: how will the academia change its approach in the classroom? So that is the kind of points that I'm raising now into any forum that is now dealing with Gen AI. So what you're using as a simple Q&A is, like I said, a bare minimum use. But like I said, if it could mimic the most smartest guy's answer, okay, or the most smartest professor who would crack the case, and his patterns of approaching the case into the assistant, you have a very different era and different aura and a different era of consulting and academia and teaching going forward out there. That is what I'm visualizing. Will not happen tomorrow, but that is where I see the world likely to go over the next 2 to 3 years out there. Okay, so having said this, but there's always a but, right? So with great power comes great responsibility, right? And this is where, as a consultant who goes on one side, swinging the pendulum and saying, yeah, go do Gen AI, it is great and it will give you benefits, there's always a pause button. And companies are also hitting pause button. So in my own portfolio, what I do, there are companies hitting pause button for a few reasons. What are the reasons, right? One, they don't have the data to run good quality outputs using the AI tool. So data becomes a question. Regulations, that is a very, very serious ask. So EU Regulation Act is already announced. I know in Asia, Hong Kong has announced one. Australia is going to release a regulation around AI. As you have more and more regulations coming out around data privacy and guardrails around that, you will have to start being careful about what outputs are you using to generate from the Gen AI tool out there. The IP protection, again, there's a very rich framework around the whole governance of Gen AI, and that is where the pause button is also getting hit. So companies are running at a good speed, but there are companies who are now realized, look, we also need to hit the pause button, do a course correction, set the guardrails, and then get onto the journey of .ai, as I call it out there. Okay, so talked about reflections, talked about what's happening now. How do you make it real, right? This is again my personal point of view of what is required to make the art of consulting. Okay, some stats. AI will not necessarily replace job, but those who know AI will definitely replace those who don't know AI. So this is like, good old days, those who didn't know PowerPoints will replace those who knew PowerPoints, etc. So it is going to be the same thing, that if you don't have a good handle about some of these tools, etc., you run the risk of becoming a bit dated and not so much wanted in the industry. So what does it mean? So let's come back to the basics first. Right? I mean, as a consultant, what are the typical traits that are required? I mean, on the left-hand side are traits of a typically good consultant, as we put it, right? So this has always been, you need to have a deep domain expertise, you need to have storytelling skills, the ability to handle complexity of today's century and today's decade, analytical thinking and coming. What I also believe, okay, to segregate from a good to become extremely good and a great consultant are some of the newer traits that I penned down. And these traits keep evolving. So this is not a static chart. This is what I call a living chart. Let's look at the first one, the learning agility. Now, this is very interesting because when I reflect, okay, the time when I was in B school or I was in college, etc., the shelf life of learning, okay, was almost, I would say, anywhere between 10 odd years was a good shelf life, okay, which means what is learned in college will help us survive for the next 10 years. We didn't have a math then, but when I reflect, I realize that. Right? So as we progress in the 2010, I realized that shelf life of learning is actually coming down. Shelf life of knowledge is coming down. To today, and if you go and correlate with the rate of change through even a market cap as an index, you will find that the rate of change and therefore the shelf life of knowledge of what you're learning today is actually not valid for more than 2 years or 3 years at best. So in such an era, okay, in my own view, the teams or the people who can actually learn faster will be the ones who will be ahead of the curve, not necessarily the person who knows more today, okay, who will always be winning the race out there. So that's point number one, right? Proficiency in AI tools is there. Visualization. This is very interesting. Okay, I was on an engagement and we delivered the final output and saying, here is the output, and we are ticked off all the boxes. Functional specifications ticked. This was my scope. This is my recommendation. Everything done. And this is the final output. Output was technically correct. Was it accepted? The answer was no. So no, can't take it. Why? I don't think my CEO will like to see this output. Need something more consumable. And therefore I realized, okay, I mean, sometimes you make a mistake and you do have a blind spot. Experience is still there in the game. Until and unless your output of whatever you do is delivering a superlative experience, you still have a problem of acceptance from the customer side. So that is where I believe good visualization and good experience is still driving force out there. And obviously, given the whole levers of change, the variables that all these technologies and all the industries going through, service delivery models are getting disrupted. Core industry will still remain the same. So an automotive industry will still make cars, but the innovation that is happening inside the car is actually far more path breaking than what it is anywhere else in the supply chain. Okay. So that's an example of a lot of transformation happening in the industry, and therefore you've got to be absolutely creativity at the highest end of your creativity and innovation standpoint. What I've also not captured is if you want to kind of get into consulting, you've got to have a flair for travel and traveling out of your suitcase. Okay, yeah, I mean you should enjoy travel, living out of a suitcase, see different places as much as you're okay with dealing with a new customer. I won't say daily, but on a frequent basis out there. So that's a bit of a snapshot of good to great consulting out there. Okay, so we talked about what is one element of consulting. Where do I see the other element of consulting coming in? And this is essentially where I see the whole era of anyone, any profession, whether you are a strat consultant, whether you are a business analyst, whether you are a tech consultant, you will actually get augmented with a fair bit of assistance, okay, that you will live with. Okay, and I'm sure as assistants, right? I mean, these are things that you create in the .ai world, because today what the tool and what you can do with technology using automation, orchestration, and all those funky words out there. If you're an M&A consultant, you actually do a fair bit of analysis and recommendations for you. Then the question comes: do you know what the right question is? We spend time in knowing what the KPIs were, distilling it down. Today you don't need all that. Everything is available, including a user journey map. To the extreme right, when you don't need to learn to write new codes out there. So I don't know what's going to happen to the engineering college. But somewhere, if you notice, this is all the stress that you see in the Indian marketplace also. One of the reasons I believe the job market is a bit facing headwinds is because companies are now possibly anticipating like some of this will come and hit them. Is my personal view, right? So I think this is where I see a lot of any profession, okay, having a set of assistance that goes along with it, and therefore segregating the good from the excellent person out there. Finally, so therefore we marry the soft skills and we marry this thing. In the consulting world, you will find what is called as a T-shaped model. It's a very typical consulting jargon that you hear. What is a T-shaped model? T-shaped model is very simple. They're essentially saying that, look, you need to have a few set of broad skills, but even a fewer set of deep skills, because ultimately you will get paid for domain skills and expertise out there. So that is a T-shaped model. What I believe therefore will happen, okay, going forward is fine, you will have the T-shaped model, but you will also have a .ai assistant that differentiates, okay, the good from the better. Okay, so therefore it will be a marriage of the T consultant plus the .ai consultant going forward out there. And therefore, yeah, this is one of my favorite pictures. And I just leave a blank picture. I put some logos depending on whom I'm addressing out here. This is what I see the world going forward, right? The people could be your client, the people could be consultants, it could be anything. But essentially you're carrying along with you, okay, somebody that you need to nurture so very carefully, okay, and train so very carefully, because the going forward humanity, the going forward industry, the going forward profession is actually at stake depending on how you train this .ai partner of us. With that, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, sure. And I think I'll wait for them to come. Okay.
Thanks a lot, sir, for your insightful keynote speech. The key takeaways which I, as a participant, found were like you distributed your entire presentation in 3 areas, wherein first of all we discussed about the evolution from the 2x2s to the data-driven consulting, the toolkit shifting from books to the GPTs of the world, and then secondly, what I also found intriguing in the second part, in the part B of your presentation, was that Gen AI is growing at a staggering speed, and disruption is already being caused at a very high speed by Gen AI, and we are moving from the plus AI era to the AI plus era. In the third part, something which is a very key takeaway for all of us is that shelf life of knowledge is coming really down, which makes learning agility even more important as the need of the hour. And then I think the T-shaped learning model is also something which we need to be mindful of, that there is not just the need for the domain knowledge, but also some kind of a generalist knowledge is required as well. Now I would like to start with our panel discussion. So let's welcome our panelist, Mr. Dipayan Ghosh. Mr. Dipayan is a partner at KPMG India. He is a lead partner to large telecom and technology accounts in India and ASEAN. He has extensive experience of more than 2 decades steering digital transformations spread across the consulting services value chain. He is an acclaimed artist in expressionist fine arts with exhibitions across the globe. He's also a passionate bodybuilder, and he's also passionate about golf. Let's welcome our next panelist, Ms. Maneesha Gupta. Ms. Maneesha is a consulting partner and business change advisor with Cognizant Consulting. With close to 2 decades of experience, she has built her career on some of the most complex and large business transformation programs for Fortune 500 firms. She has led multicultural teams across multiple geographies and industry verticals. Also, she is a sponsor for Cognizant Women in Consulting and has mentored many women consultants as a part of this initiative. Please welcome Ms. Maneesha. Okay. Our next panelist, Mr. Abhijit Majumdar, is a partner at PwC India and heads the digital strategy consulting business. He has over 2.5 decades of experience in scaling up consulting businesses. He regularly writes and speaks on the areas of digital economy and technology adoption. He's a fitness enthusiast, and what's really fascinating is that he has run over 40 marathons in India and globally. He also loves to paint and participate in social and cultural engagements. Let's welcome our next panelist, who also happens to be a powerful speaker, Mr. Anoop Chaturvedi, Country Manager at Hewlett-Packard Enterprise India. He manages advisory and professional services for HPE in India geography. Technologies like big data, blockchain, AI, and IoT are the key focal points in his expertise. He has been a television news guest, a keynote speaker, and a quiz master. Ladies and gentlemen, now it's time to welcome our moderator for today, our dear professor in the area of strategy and consulting, Professor Prem Chandrani, sir. Professor Prem has seen the best of both worlds, industry and academia. He has around 5 decades of experience as an industry leader, a consultant, and an academician. His areas of interest include business strategy, financial and management accounting, and corporate finance. He has held C-level positions in several leading companies across the globe. He has been conducting a business consulting workshop for the last 15 years. Having been a part of his workshop recently, I can now say why his workshops are so popular amongst our seniors. Please welcome Professor Prem. Let's start with our panel discussion. Yeah.
Thank you for the introductions, and I want to welcome the panelists once again on stage. Thank you so much for being around over here. This happens to be the last conclave of Samavesh, because we've had 6 of them, and I'm glad that I can still see a full house over here, and the enthusiasm of the students and the audience is palpable, actually. So we're going to have an hour together out here, trying to work on the theme, which is about navigating the evolving consulting landscape. So the consulting landscape has been changing, and rapidly so, with the arrival of especially Gen AI now. And we heard from Prasad earlier about what's happening in that space. And what we also feel is that it's important for companies to be more agile, more adaptable, more informed, okay, if they really want to succeed in the way the world is changing right now. And I think the role of the consultants obviously is to help the companies achieve what the companies want to do. So, and of course, every company wants to be a step ahead of their competitors. And I think consultants are there to support them to achieve those objectives. But as we heard earlier today in the keynote speech about things that are happening in the consulting world and generally around us, they are changing the landscape. There are disruptions that are happening around us, and the question is that what are you going to do about that? How are you going to handle that? Okay, so I want to continue with Gen AI as a theme, which was what we were talking about earlier. Okay, so Gen AI, as we can see, can be seen from different perspectives. Okay, we can think about Gen AI from the perspective of the consulting firm. We can think about Gen AI in terms of the clients as well. Okay, consulting firms can use it as a resource. Okay, but it can also be something which can disrupt how consulting works. And similarly, clients want to know how Gen AI can disrupt their industry, their business, and how consultants can help them embed Gen AI, into their own work environment. So, the question that comes to my mind basically, and I'm going to put this question, we have our panelists out there. In fact, I'm going to turn it around in the panel actually, is, okay, so how is Gen AI reshaping the way the consultants themselves work? Could I start with you?
Sure. So thank you so much. I think, see, while, so the entire momentum around Gen AI and specifically around artificial intelligence and then various parts of the artificial intelligence or layers of it, the true potential has been revealed only in the last 12 months. And the potential that it has is only, I can say, only revealed up to 15 to 20%. There is huge potential that is going to be used in the years to come. Now, from a Gen AI perspective, from a consulting landscape side, I think while we will rely and we are already relying on a part of it, which is to provide information faster with respect to the industries or the landscapes that they're living in, but we can't rely on that 100% because at the end of the day, Gen AI is also relying on the model databases. So it is only as strong as the data that you feed. And unfortunately, in the last decade, the quality of the data which has been fed into it is not of that great way, not of that great variety. While the volume is there, but the kind of the data sets which are available are not that good. So which means that we'll have to be very prudent in using Gen AI only to the extent or limit of where it can provide us information, which is to be moderated then later on by the expert human intervention. And hence we will be living at an intersubjective realm of machines and humans taking a collective, concise decision together.
Right. So I heard you saying that for the moment we still feel that the humans have an edge, so to say.
Yeah. See, we process far more data. See, look at this conference itself, right? So the way we are acquiring data right now is in multiple video frames. Each time that we're looking at each other, each time that we are analyzing a gesture, each time when I pick up the microphone, each time that I'm getting a click, we are processing that data and we are being cognizant of that data. Now, this quality of data you don't get in Gen AI still. It is still a few decades later that you'll be able to have that kind of processing ability, both in terms of compute as well as storage, as well as the algorithms which are going to refine and redefine the way the outcomes are to come out of that Gen AI.
Interesting. I will pause over there. I would pose the same question to my other panelists, and I did hear you saying that it's a few decades, but let me pass it on to Dipayan. Dipayan, your views on Gen AI and how you think about it as a resource for your business.
Right. Thank you. I would rather say that it has essentially increased the value of consultants.
Mhm.
And that's primarily because that even 10 years back or 15 years back, whenever any new technology came in, we always used to believe a certain equation, which used to be a Bible of our equation. It used to run as OO plus
Just
NT.
1 second. Is he audible at the mic?
Am I not?
You're audible? Yeah. All right. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Please
Right.
continue. Yeah.
And it was a very weird equation that we used to use. And we used to always say that OO plus NT is equal to EOO, which essentially means that old organization plus new technology is an expensive old organization. So that essentially brings about the fact that even if you get in Gen AI, or at some point in time there used to be a Watson, it is still somebody who understands the business, somebody who has experience as a consultant, who can feed in the use cases into Gen AI. So what you are getting through an AI is a way to technologically automate what you would have otherwise implemented. But at the end of the day, it is the consultant through his experience who is finding out what are those feasible and palatable use cases which can be built client by client, taking the client's nuances into consideration, taking the industry specifics into consideration, also taking a maturity of the market into consideration. The second point is that once it is implemented, you have developed a use case, you have put it into Gen AI. Any AI tech will take a certain amount of time to learn, relearn, and improve the accuracy of its recommendation. So as a consultant, I have a vested interest there. I can stick with the client during the implementation and the support and the maintenance of that tech, right? So I am basically helping the client getting more out of or sweat the asset of Gen AI that they have implemented. Now, this is how it is changing. Now, having said that, if somebody who is not aware of the power of this tech, will that person have a problem? Will that person face a sort of a threat of extinction in the market? Yes, of course, he will or she will, right? So you need to know it, but also you need to know how to leverage the power to make it work for the client and stick along with the client to see it through.
Right. But and in terms of the firm itself, is anything changing in that account? Because here, of course, you're talking about the client, and the client is seeing through it. But what about the firm itself?
Right. So as to the firm itself, there are probably three areas where it is changing. What I talked about, that you need to have practitioners who are proficient in a certain degree on this area. I mean, nobody can stand up and say that I know nothing about AI. I am a strat consultant, so I don't do AI. Right? You cannot say that. So you need to have practitioners who have considerable amount of knowledge at different degrees of maturity on this topic. Secondly, even if you are a pure play strat firm, you would need to have you need to go to the client with a certain repository of use cases. So whenever you are going and talking to the client, and let's take an example. Let's take an example of around 10 years back, we still used to do market insights. We used to do customer insights, and then if I were to consult somebody on how can you increase customer experience, there were certain pen and paper models in which you would segment a customer, you would develop personas, you would create a customer journey map, and you will see what are the pain points and the gain points in which you can improve the customer experience. Today, there are AI capabilities which can give you that insights ready-made. So you need to use that power and then create that to consulting value.
Maneesha, so come over to you on the same subject of Gen AI, but a slightly different question for you. We heard Dipayan saying that you cannot say I do not know Gen AI, but obviously it's a new tool, maybe there for a few years now, less than a year or 2 years, whatever you call it. There are a lot of consultants who've been in the organization for 10, 15, 20 years. How do you see their future? What do you think is going to happen? How does everybody need to learn Gen AI, or how do you see change happening in the world?
So, how I look at it, and building upon what Dipayan said, with so much talk about digital technology, artificial intelligence, analytics, guys, there is not going to be any compression algorithm for experience. So 20 years from now, even 40 years from now, when you build a case for change, when you come up with a business model solution, the context is going to change, right? How is economy? And consulting will mirror and reflect what is happening in economy and come up with a business model which is palpative for the enterprise, but it will be enabled by Gen AI, of course. It will be analytics powered, but the case for change has to be done with the customization, considering the nuances of the business that the client is in. Customization based on what is happening in economy, customization based on what segment is working well, what category is working well, and also focus is shifting towards from operationalization, rationalization kind of consulting work to how do we reduce the time to market? How do we make our clients' products more consumable by their customers, and how do we enhance their customer experience? So what I look at it is there's a lot of human interaction, and of course it has to be powered and enabled by all the technology which is available, and that technology itself is evolving with more and more data insights getting into it, but that human interaction is not going to go away. So customization, which is the core for any business model that consultants are going to come up with, it will remain there. And that's how I look at it.
Sure. Abhijit, do you see, and we heard Prasad say earlier that, there will be people who don't know Gen AI and will replace people who know Gen AI. So do you see only a churn happening in the firm, or do you expect that there could be a shrinkage in the number of consultants the firm will be using in the future in terms of number of people?
Before I answer that question, I think if I step back a bit and see what's happening in the industry,
Right.
consulting industry, of course, mirrors what's happening in society and industry. Right? So there are three big forces happening right now. The whole industry, broadly, is across all sectors are going through a massive disruption. Right? Their business models are changing. There's a deglobalization happening because of various factors. Not going into details. The customers themselves, their profiles are changing. So if you look in India as a market, promoter-driven businesses are now being taken over by the next generation, who are educated in US, UK universities. They've come armed with knowledge about latest business models, AI, etc. They are now aspiring to drive businesses in a very different manner. So when they're engaging with us consultants, their behavior is different. And the third is the way technology and some of these other enablers like Gen AI are available. The combination of these are definitely forcing consultants to change. Now I'll come to your point about what is changing. So as consultants, we definitely need to do things better, faster, and different. Right? Because the economy is changing, the customers are changing, and even our consumers for whom we serve, they are changing. So no one can say, we will, or no firm can say that we will not have people or senior people or junior people who are not adept at doing AI. So it is infused in the ways of working. Right? Let me give an example to clarify to people who are aspiring to get into consulting. About 10 years back, if there was a customer problem, the scene would play out like this. There would be 5 consultants suited like this who would go in to meet a customer, and they would describe a problem. And then, as consultants, we would deploy that team to do a manual understanding of the various processes involved, whether it's on the technology side or the business domain side. All of that is now expected to change. We are now expected to go into the first meeting with a set of point of views driven with data. Now you can't do that manually. So there's a whole lot of AI engines that enables you to go into the first meeting with a point of view. So that is changing. The second is, as you solve the problem, whether it's a supply chain problem, it's a it's a customer engagement problem, it's a any sort of business problem, you have to solve it with a whole lot of business inputs now, because there's much more data available, much more use cases and success and failure stories available, and for us to be able to synthesize all of that and be able to make the next generation of such recommendations which someone else is just not copy pasting, right? That needs a whole lot of usage of these tools. So net, what's happening is all these forces are enabling or are asking even senior partners, leaderships, and the junior consultants, right? People who are going to come into the workforce, all of them to come with basic AI and data skills and analytics skills. Earlier, a good consultant, a topper in this class, would be good with analytics skills and good Excel skills, right? And would be able to drive macros and all that. That is passé. They have to come into the industry with AI skills. And when they come as senior partners, we need to be equipped as well, right? So now, presentations have changed. You don't necessarily present a PowerPoint back to a client, right? You are presenting AI-enabled videos with data, enhanced into that. So your ways of communicating with the client, your ways of assessing, your ways of interfacing with the client have all changed, right? And so the starting point of a consultant is very different from what it was 15 years back. So everyone in the organization needs to do that. As a consulting firm, coming to your question, what are we doing? We are enabling a significant part, and I'm speaking probably for everyone. We are devoting a significant part of our training revenues to upskilling people across levels, right? Because that is, otherwise we will get disrupted.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
There will be startups based on AI who can do all the work that we have been doing in all the big brands that we have here. They could be obliterated. And these are big brands which are there for 100, 150 years, right?
Right.
Because we have managed to somehow break that magic and stay alive ahead of this. So I think that is the magic which will require to be continued. But here I feel, because we're in the middle of it, the threat for the consulting profession is much greater. If we don't catch the bus this time, we could seriously be left behind.
So I want to pick up from what Anoop was saying a little while ago about saying that the quality of data is still not that great, and you're saying you're using whatever is there and going to the clients with what is available in the space with whatever AI is working upon, whatever they have learned through their algorithms. How do you reconcile this?
Yeah, I'll give an example. Please bear with me. We think AI is doing great. How many of you feel AI is doing great? It's terrific. Fair amount. Okay. I'll give an example. There's a museum called the Smithsonian Museum, in which the first aircraft that the Wright brothers built is physically kept. It was built in 1906. Please bear with this story. And for the first 20 years, all that they were doing with that aircraft was putting red smoke in it and going around and making hula hoops in the air, basically creating a circus out of it, because they did not know what that invention was for. With AI, we are in that same phase. We are fooling around, trying to figure out what the use case is. It took the First World War to tell people that the use case of an aircraft is to transport bombs and equipment and men across great distances. And in 30 years from then, we put people on the moon, when the first use case was discovered. If you see, some of you, who have that experience, when we connected to the internet at the beginning, we used to have the PSTN lines. You remember the sound? If you look at ChatGPT, the way it is serving you the answer, it is exactly that, one word at a time. So we are in the dial-up phase of AI. So you are true. AI is in its very, very, very nascent stages. It will take us about 15 years now to reach its true potential. So while we are excited by it, yes, we were excited by the dial-up of the internet as well, right? Now we are in 5G. So
Yeah.
we are in that stage. So I agree with my co-panelists that there is a lot of data discrepancy, but whatever we have, I think we have to do the best with it. We cannot skip the 10 years intervening, right? So if we meet 10 years from now, I think we'll have a very different conversation.
Consulting.
The person who introduced us wouldn't need to do that. Everyone could scan and figure out who we are. We would avoid those 5 minutes.
Sure. That's nice. Very good. Prasad, you're already working in the AI spaces for the last 14 months. You're doing a lot of work in that space already. So what kind of expertise or help are clients wanting? Why are they wanting AI to be embedded into their business processes? What are they trying to achieve? I could understand what consultants are trying to do.
Okay, so first is, when you see the impact of AI and the buzzword around it, the board members are now saying, what the hell are you doing on AI?
Right.
So it starts from the top actually. So half of the AI euphoria that you see is because somebody in the board has spoken to somebody and saying, oh, I'm hearing this new technology which will come and disrupt. So you have a bit of a hype created because the board member or the CEO has heard about it, and it is pretty much necessary for you to be also an AI adopting company. Otherwise, you'll be seen as a bit of a laggard in the industry. Okay? So there is definitely that a sense of pressure or the peer pressure that asks people to force into AI and check out a few things out there, including something that we are doing with some board members out there. How can AI come and help me out? So that's definitely it. The second is, now let me try and answer as to why companies are doing it in a bit more. Let me take an industry and try and put companies in a spectrum of very mature industries and evolving companies out there. And Anoop raised a very great point about where are these data coming from, what kind of data it is getting trained on, what is the richness of the data, etc. Now, I mean, obviously there are ways to handle that, but fundamentally what I'm now seeing is data-rich companies. So if I have a very strong mining data, I have a very strong geological data, I have a very strong patient history data. That is what I'm now trying to use and tune models that are controllable, not just being trained on the internet, okay, to come out with and discover a use case. So one set of companies are trying to discover and take a high risk approach and a high investment approach to come out with new product and services that will potentially revamp the industry. That is one set of users that are getting into it. That's point number one. The second set of users who are jumping into it are trying to use Gen AI for their internal transformation. For example, it could be a drug discovery, which means the way my R&D is functioning, which means the way I'm discovering or maybe designing new products. If I can revamp that through, so internal transformation is the second set of categories I'm seeing out there. The third and more safer approach, which is what I'm seeing prevalent in the organization, is the back office transformation, which means I take Gen AI into an IT, an HR, a marketing, a procurement, and try and see in a very controlled environment what is it doing, and therefore slowly be a good student of Gen AI, not necessarily be a transformative leader, because transformation requires investment and so on. So that's the third category out there. And then there are the fourth category, which I call the front office transformers. Now these are people who are very B2C oriented, and for them, if they don't have a better experience in dealing with their consumer and somebody else comes and delivers the experience, then they are literally wiped out. That is the fourth set of companies, which means you're transforming your customer touch points using Gen AI. So broadly,
how does that help?
So just simplistically, let's take a case of front-end transformation. If I am using Gen AI to go and transcribe all my call records, okay, in terms of what is all my call records giving me the insights, what is my new revenue potential, or for that matter, if I can use a Gen AI logic to help you better search my website for a better product recommendation. Okay. AI always exists. So this is an AI plus a Gen AI option that I'm now putting on my website to take the experience to a different level. Right. So that's a front-end focus organization. And I'll take a simple example, Julius Baer. We did a pilot with them. I mean, classical investment banking firm, has high net worth individuals as their customers,
right,
and issues research papers and so on and so forth.
Absolutely.
What they're now doing using Gen AI and they're piloting it right now as we speak, and it's available in public domain, is instead of issuing white papers, I'll issue podcasts which have been created on Gen AI. So therefore, now you're talking about a service delivery mechanism getting created thanks to the power of Gen AI. So I think which is where I see the higher investment and higher return coming in out there. And like Abhijit mentioned, the startup firms who are kind of going to disrupt it will make the most out of it. Like Anoop mentioned, the team that has the best data will make the most out of it. But that's broadly the four categories I'm seeing in the market as we speak today. tomorrow, new customer segment, new use case. I'll possibly have to report back next year in Samavesh.
Now, very good example of how the service delivery mechanism was changed. A different question, but continuing on AI, and this is perhaps I'm going to move to other things a little later. I'm going back to Anoop. Anoop, are there any ethical implications of using AI?
So till last year, specific to India market, I think people had free access to data. So it was like quite democratic to go out and get whatever data that you want of users. But with enforcement of DPDP Act and the reinforcement of DPDP, which is going to happen now, the data sovereignty is going to become a very important aspect. So I'll just narrate one small story. I spoke to one startup guy, who started a tea company, and 10 rupees tea. Okay, he was selling outside of DAKC. And my question to him was, I said, why do you want to sell tea? Okay, and why are you present here? And he said that I'm not in the business of selling tea. I want to get data of all these thousands of people who are coming here and buying that tea and making a UPI transaction. And I want to then try and understand that how many of these people can take micro loans from me. Now, if that is the kind of focus that people are trying to build on their ability to fetch more data. So even a chai wala is thinking like that. Although, I mean, we have a lot of respect for chai walas. So, yeah, but there's a different case. So, but the question is that free access is now going to get restricted. And soon, all the apps, all the websites, all the places where you are pumping in your own data, and we are to be blamed because all of us are habituated to give free access to our data to all the companies, and in return we get something, right? I mean, sometimes it is a bit wrong also, because I was told by Google Maps today that I'll reach here by 4. So they didn't factor in Ganpati. So there's a problem with the algorithm. But the point is that with DPDP enforcement, and same way you have GDPR issues and other geographies also, there will be going to be more focus on this. So from an ethics point of view and from the compliance point of view, your ability to have that free access will get compromised, or else people will be monetizing that. So somebody may say that, yes, I am willing to give this data, but then I want a free 1-year subscription or a 2-year subscription and things like that. And also the access, the limit in terms of the access that they will be providing to. Now, third and important part is that there are a lot of those magical tools which actually popularized AI, specifically around the avatars. Okay, people started giving their images and started looking like glamorous heroines, okay, actors and actresses. Now, just imagine that all of this is still on the boundary of ethical or non-ethical, and those kind of questions will be raised every time. And I follow a very big historian, and this historian is not tech, but he's focused on tech. You all know Harari. He says that in the future, the ability to write the right kind of algorithms ethically will define which companies will succeed. And I think we are right now at the cusp of that starting, as all my co-panelists said, that it's another 5 to 10 years when the Gen AI's true potential will be revealed. But you have to get onto the runway now, otherwise you'll get late. Because already your research has become faster, your analytics has become faster, your ability to know about the customer insight or industries has become faster. But the ability to replace human beings from creating an outcome is still, we are not there, and that's where I think we still have our jobs for another 5-10 years. And after that, it will be an intersection of ourselves and the machine capabilities, which will enhance our potential. And if we don't learn, then it will be someone else from the startup community which will come and replace us. Or if we learn, then possibly we'll keep replacing them.
Interesting, very interesting. I want to move on from AI because I think we've covered a fair bit of it. I want to move to another big topic these days, which is all about, about sustainability, social governance, and the environment, and all this stuff that is there. Dipayan, if I can come to you on that. I think, I read some report which said that in the next 3 years, okay, consultants themselves will be getting twice the amount of revenue they're getting today. from ESG consulting. That's what they are saying. Okay, that's a rather report. Well, it was somebody's opinion on that. Okay, what kind of work is your firm doing in the ESG space and sustainability space?
Thank you. You heard it right. You heard it right. And essentially, not only my firm, most of the consulting firms, we cannot just not have an offering or a solution of ESG. And initially, when ESG came in, maybe 1.5 years back or so, and when we had started consulting on ESG, we would rather give them the framework. The framework and the parameters of regulation or compliance that they need to do around E, S, and G. But eventually, what we do today is that no ESG consulting is complete without, let's say, the capability to build an ESG command center. So not only do you put in the compliance frameworks in place, but you also build a command center, which again needs a very important aspect of data governance and data management. So essentially, if you visualize the solution that I'm talking about, once the framework is put on paper and you build a command center, let's say a BRSR report or any other report that you generate, it will dip into the master data tables of the client, extract the data, and generate the reports. And on a periodic basis, that is used to furnish to various places and see the improvement. Now, here again, very interestingly, that quality of data comes back in. Now, I know that I need to achieve a certain compliance level. I know that I need to report that to certain authorities, but my current data, is it compliant enough or is it quality enough that I can generate reports of compliance essentially through that? So you see, when we talk about ESG, we are not only talking about ESG, we are talking about the paraphernalia consulting offerings that is around ESG. So there is a data governance and data management framework that is coming into place, a data cleansing and quality parameter coming into place, putting in probably a command center, and the command center can be built on top of, let's say, there are companies like ServiceNow who has capabilities there, and many other companies have capabilities there. So all that paraphernalia comes into place. Another interesting thing about ESG is that we keep on talking about net zero.
Sure.
Now the question here is, are companies essentially interested in net zero? Or do they only want to do their part zero?
Yeah. Okay. Net zero for the industry versus just their part.
Right.
Okay.
So so it's like this, we had that saying, right? I mean, stress never goes. You just pass on the stress. So similarly, so if I am decarbonizing myself, am I doing it at the cost of passing on the carbon emissions to my upward stream or downward stream?
Or just buying carbon credits.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. So it will take quite a lot of work and quite a lot of very advanced and mature consulting advice to get in to gradually make the entire, to gradually achieve the true net zero.
Yeah. So, one thing is about sustainability, which you kind of give a very good example out there. But, increasingly I feel that consultants are beginning to think about, when they're making their recommendations, they're also thinking about how does their recommendation bring about social change. It's not about only the business. Okay, and that's an important element as well, because it's not just about saying, okay, I'm making a recommendation that can help you improve your profit, improve your business. Okay, we are cognizant about sustainability, but I think social change also is an equally important aspect to look at. Maybe that's something which also has to be embedded into the consulting recommendations. Thank you for bringing that point up. Yes. Maneesha, I know you've done some work in M&A space actually, and we are becoming increasingly globalized now. So cross-border M&A is something that happens to a large extent now. So, but some of the issues or problems that we actually face in that really is basically cultural integration, for example. Okay, you've done some work in that space. Can you share some experiences with us about how does that turn out?
So cultural integration in any M&A scenario is the most overlooked but the most critical aspect of it. So M&A, we do it, looking at, okay, how we are going to integrate their technologies, their applications, their platforms, how do we make them look like just one single organization and not two different organizations? It might look like that from outside, but what are the ways of working within? How they are collaborating, how they are interacting with each other. Do they consider themselves as part of of the same organization or two different organizations? So that has always been challenging, and that is where I think consulting also needs to integrate in their business model when they approach, let's say one organization is acquiring book of accounts from other. Just not look at it in an operational transactional way, but look at it carefully in a more strategic way. I'll give you an example. An India-based liquor company was being acquired. I mean, majority stakes were taken by a UK-based multinational liquor giant. Now, two companies could not be any more different from each other. While one was an MNC with a lot of global visibility and consumers across the globe and celebrities promoting their products, the India-based was a family-run business, and employees look at their founder and chairperson and CEOs as just next to God, because that was their working model. And when the global MNC acquired it, it was not like leaving their organization and getting into another organization. It was the change of, I mean, how they perceived it was my observation. It was completely change of their lifestyle at their workplace. It was as complicated as that, and extremely difficult to pull them out of their ways of working into, small things, right? From maybe getting them into the habit of punching their cards and not entering it into a register. I mean, as simple and smallest thing as that.
So how do consultants? So the point I'm trying to emphasize out here is that because we are becoming global, and when this kind of merger happens, consultants are available to help out. So what are the things consultants do in trying to get this cultural integration happening? What kind of work do you do?
So model that Prasad talked about in his keynote, wherein consultants start with getting the lay of land. What is happening today?
Right.
What is as a state? And where do you want to be? First thing is, as a consultant, ensure that there is sponsorship not only for integration at operational process application platform level, but CXO sponsorship or founder sponsorship at cultural level as well, and that is how it will drive down. So if consultants make it an integrated part of their end-to-end strategy,
Right.
and not bring it on as a a value add, because that is not going to work. Change can be implemented but cannot be adopted like that, and if it is not adopted, then consider it has not happened.
Not happening, yes, not done, absolutely. Thank you, Maneesha, that was very interesting. Moving on to Abhijit now again. So Abhijit, these days we all talk about remote working, hybrid working, and that's the big thing that's happening both in consulting firms as well as in client organizations as well. So question is, how comfortable are you as a leader, okay, for firms working in remote places? You prefer people to be in the office, or you are happy and comfortable people working remotely?
It's probably an evolving answer, and let me put some color to it. There are certain organizations in which you can't have a work from home. a pilot needs to be in his work, a doctor needs to be at his place of work. But on the other side, a product company being driven by technology can afford to have some time of work done from remote locations, or what we call anywhere locations, right? But even there, and across this whole continuum of where you definitely need to be at work, and on the other hand, of companies or places where you don't need to be at work all the time, there is a mix or an evolution of thought happening. For example, at one point, one of the IT services companies publicly mentioned in India that 70% of their workforces are not going to come back to office ever again. That CIO lost his job in a year's time. Okay, I'm not saying it's because of it, but maybe some correlation, because there was a whole lot of reversal of momentum that was applied, probably unnaturally, to put people in roles in which they couldn't succeed to make their clients succeed. Right? Now, let me give an example. If I'm working with an airline client, right? Say, for example, and I'll tie it back to your question. Say the integration of Air India and Vistar, right, which we are doing.
Sure.
The first thing that happened is our realization that we have to be in that office, because we are integrating not just two logos, but we are integrating two different people. There are all of us in this room who would prefer to go to airline 1 and not to airline 2 because of whatever our experiences have been, right? Do you agree?
Yeah.
So it is not a merger. So if you look into the technology, 95% of their technologies are the same. Their planes are 100% the same. Their pilots are 100% the same. And yet we choose airline 1 over airline 2, either because of the sector or because of our preferences, right? The first thing that we did is to go to their offices, park ourselves then in there, and try to understand the customer segments they're matching, they're addressing, why people are taking one airline versus other, and the aspirations and the fears of the people there. Now, these are things that couldn't be done from home, because a lot of the friction that happens in any business when you are transforming, right, incrementally, or you're radically transforming, which results in business process or business model reinvention or mergers and acquisitions. In each of these models, people are at the front and at the center of the whole change. And if you are not in office, and if your role requires you to be in office, you have to be in office. So what we are now defining is that for us consultants, many of whom are in client-facing roles, have to be in front of their client offices. Yes, there will be requirements on days where we have some personal requirements. You have to go to PTMs because we are humans. We have to take sick leaves. Those are days which we have the flexibility, all of us, to take those days off or be flexible with our arrangements. Within our same organizations, we have some teams that are driving asset-based consulting, which Prasad spoke of earlier.
You're right.
If those are the people, they don't need to serve any clients, where they're defining a concept and innovation, right? They actually need to be away from office, because that's where they can think well, right? So it's a mix of the clients or the purpose you are serving, the technologies you are dealing with, and the physical environment of that particular geography that you are in, right? So in India, I might be working on an innovation work, not required to go to a client site, but if I or required to say go to a client site, but if I stay in a city like Pune, and I need will have to travel 2 hours just to go from place A to B, I would probably apply a different logic to distribute my work from home versus work from office. So I think this model has no clear answer, but we are encouraging people in consulting to be in the heart of the businesses that they're dealing with. So if you are consulting, you need to be in office to define your next generation AI-based consulting models, or be in the client side to be solving the client's problems, right? And if you're not in office, then probably you're out of circulation.
That's a good one. And so you're kind of saying that consultants are preferring people to come back.
Yes.
To the office.
And we are saying this with some degree of experience now, having seen this play out over the COVID years. So we are actually I think all of us are back in offices now. I can say for all of us, we are all back in offices, because that's where we function, right?
That's interesting. Many people have thought that work from anywhere will be there forever, but it doesn't seem to be the case.
It isn't. In fact, Yahoo publicly said, I gave one example of an Indian company. Yahoo formally asked all their companies to compulsorily come back to office as a written memo, right? So I think even for product companies, internet companies, they've realized that what binds people together is there human interactions which can only happen in office, right?
Absolutely.
And that's what you can't miss, especially for youngsters. My message to be with them, you have to be in office because you are trying to build an institution. You're not going to an office to earn your salary or build your CV. You're there to build an institution, right? And that will probably take 30 years of your career. You will do it in 3-4 organizations. But if you're not there as part of it, you're out of it. So a lot of things happen outside your desk. So I know you need to be able to harvest that energy. You need to be able to understand what the vibes are for you to be able to become the next generation leader.
Yeah, and a lot of decisions get made in the water fountain. That's where decisions get made. So that has to be in the office. But I come back to Prasad. Prasad, you talked about, of course, so many years of experience. Talked about digital transformation consulting starting off in 2010 or thereabouts. More than a decade that it has been there. Consulting firms have been, of course, doing a lot of work with clients in digital transformation. But increasingly, I've seen reports which say that clients have not been able to fully extract the strategic value of digital investments that they have made. Why is that?
Okay, so this is like, a very dangerous question to answer from a consulting standpoint. I'm supposed to be swinging and selling as to why digital transformation gives benefit. And then if I give a kind of do a faux pas out here, then I'm either blaming myself or I'm blaming the client. So this has no, so I've got to be very careful in what I answer on this question out there.
That's first for you.
I think, okay, but let me kind of simplistically put down why reasons it hasn't taken off or where it has failed out there, right? Poor experience. How many of you have seen the SBI app, the State Bank of India digital app? Now almost everyone, right? Yeah. I mean, can you imagine the offtake of that app when it was actually launched 4 or 5 years back? It was like absolutely in the doldrums. Okay. Experience sucked. User journeys were broken. There was a lot of errors that were coming up and so on. So I think by and large, if I talk about pure digital transformation, one of the biggest reasons why a lot of this failed to deliver the promise was experience. So that was point number one. The second reason why, and I'm going to go into technical and then I'll come into the softer parts of it as well.
Sure.
The second reason why it failed was when the user journeys became far more complex out there. And this is where that whole design thinking element and that user journey came in out there. So, and the aha moment was, right, when you could get into your end state of your transaction in maybe 1 or 2 clicks, right? Anything more than 3 and beyond, the user would switch off or switch to an app that gave a better experience where it could get to the end destination in 1 or 2 clicks out there. And I think we have been through this journey quite a bit out there, where some of the more cumbersome apps started to lose their way, and 0-click apps or 1-click apps became the second journey out there. The third element was where the inherent data and the backend integration of processes broke through, which means you have a great app, but not following through the customer's experience. This is like saying, picking up what Abhijit mentioned, airline was 1 versus airline 2. The app of airline 1, even if it was better, people still do not go there. So there is a larger set of elements that drives behavior and consumption beyond the digital transformation. So that's the third element where it kind of starts to fall through. So there is, depending on what lens you take at a particular problem, you will start to kind of dissect it either through a business lens and come out with a business set of issues, change management issues, leadership issues, or through a technology lens or through an experience lens. I think broadly I would categorize reasons for suboptimal delivery of digital transformation in these 3 categories with more established firms.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. In a way, this is an important aspect to understand that quite often we have a very technical view about things. We start thinking about things technically but not understand the business side of things that well. So the technical acumen versus business acumen, I think the balance is very important to have out there.
And let me give an example. I'm working with this automotive client for the last 7 years now. Mm-hmm. These days, for people who have an automotive car, you have this Connect app, right? You can trace your vehicle, you can switch it on, you can switch it off. You can play with literally whatever you want through that app of yours on your phone, right? 5-7 years back when we were beginning this journey, we said, look, this is going to be the in thing with this client of ours. One department said, yes, we would want to go for it. And we think it is the right way to do it.
Right.
The other department said, no, we don't think that this is too early for India. This will take some time and all those things. So in this whole debate, we said we'll do one thing. Give us a couple of 2 to 3 weeks, and we'll come back with what we believe you might want to do. And we actually went to talking to primary customers who would want to kind of we asked a very simple question: do you think these set of features would be valuable for you? Lo and behold, what was surprising and what was a bit counterintuitive even for the company was the ask for those services was much more higher than what they thought customers wanted. They never thought an automobile would actually sell because of these features. And that is when the journey began, with a few hundred cars getting connected to a few thousand cars to a few million cars now getting connected, where now it is a minimum basic feature available for everyone to consume. Now, I also know cases where it fell through, but eventually the course correction happened. So just to kind of put things in perspective, like I mentioned, it's either a business lens that will lead to the diagnostics of failure, or a technical lens, as I call it, or it could be the experience lens. And I'll put data and technical into one bucket, actually.
Right. Yeah. Sure. Thanks. Now, I think I'm also cognizant of the time right now. So I want to put a final question to all the panel members, and please do answer them at your own pace. Whoever wants to start. You see, the point is that we have a lot of young people out here who are all, as we saw in the initial stage, aspiring to be consultants out here. They're going to be entering the consulting world at some point in time, but that's what the aspirations are. So what advice would you have for them, so that when they enter the consulting world, they are successful? So any advice that you may have in terms of skills, attitude, anything that you want to talk about, please feel free to do so, but give them some advice so that they take the benefits of your wisdom while you're all here. Why don't you start?
So the first advice is that congratulations on completing your course, which you'll complete either this year or maybe next year. And welcome to the University of Corporates, where you'll have to keep learning. So your enrollment is successful. And I think one important lesson that you have to understand is that the consulting landscape is changing at an extremely fast pace. And I think each of us spoke about that if we do not learn, then we will extinguish, we will be out of the race and we will be replaced by someone else. So, which means that at all point of time, we'll have to unlearn and learn. And this process will continue eternally now. And while we were threatened by the next generation, you will be threatened by Gen Alpha. Then now I hear that there is a Gen Z which is coming up. And trust you me, the ability to process faster is not only improving with machines, it is also improving with human beings. So, I mean, if you just go and check out your siblings or your kids who are in that age group, you'll see that their ability to process information is much more faster. We used to read newspapers at one point of time to process information. Our kids use Instagram or Telegram and all of that to process information, or podcasts for processing that information. So they're much faster. At the same time, when you come to the corporates and when you come to specifically on the consulting landscape side, the customers are no more looking at advice only. So the advisory based kind of services are out. It is more outcome based services, which means that you'll have to put your all in. And as said by all my co-panelists, which means that when you're working with a client, you have to understand their culture, you have to understand their environment, you have to understand what kind of information do they process and how do they process, and then you'll have to align with them. And each time when the client changes, this also changes for you every time, which means that you have to again unlearn and do that again. So just two-sided example, what work you can do with the State Bank of India may not fit in when you are doing that with the ICICI Bank. And each organization's cultural fabric is different, which means that the kind of understanding that they have about you and the kind of expectation that they have from you will also keep changing every time when you meet them, because they are also becoming smarter and faster thanks to AI.
Thank you. Bye.
Three things essentially. I would first rank what I would rank the highest is relationships. Now, why relationships, right? I mean, consulting people will generally put, let's say, knowledge on top or put presentation skills on top. But when I say relationships inside the office, relationships with the client, relationships with every stakeholder within the client, because that essentially builds empathy. And when you have empathy, that helps you understand the specific nuances of the client better. Now, there's a lot of learning that we consultants look. I mean, what you always need to know is that we are on this side. We have not run the business of the client ever. We have either read certain case studies or done some book work. Then what gives us the capacity to go and advise them? What is it that we know better than them, which they have been running for 10, 15, 20, 25 years? Now, so you should respect that fact, and even when you are talking to the client, be open to understand from the client what they are actually looking for, which essentially also means that one size doesn't fit all, right? So you can't stand up and say that we never come and say that I am the ultimate industry expert. We don't say that. We are still learning, right? Even after 20 years, 25 years, we're still learning about that industry. The second one, if I may, is about collaboration is an essential part of consulting. Now, that is essentially because gone are the days where you can go and you can advise a client on a particular skill set that you might be very good at. More often than not, when you go to a client, the client problem can actually be solved by a combination of skills which is humanly impossible for you yourself to have, right? So essentially always think about how you can collaborate within your organization or within your friends or within various partners. So today, for example, we consultants, we work a lot in partnerships, right? So for example, an HP and a KPMG work together and sell with together to a client, because we do understand that there are certain skills that HP brings in which KPMG doesn't have, and vice versa, right? So the collaboration not only happens inside the company, it also goes outside the company, right? That's it.
Right. So I'll give you one word formula for it. Embrace. And I mean, all the panelists spoke about different skills that we need to have. Dipayan also spoke about how we cannot say that I'm not an AI person or I'm not a tech expert, so I cannot talk about it. Or if you are from technology, you cannot say that I don't come with domain expertise, then why are you here, in this client office and talking to us on our business model? So embrace is the formula. Core and fundamentals of consulting will remain same. We need to understand our client's business. We need to understand the market dynamics, what is happening, and how our clients could leverage from it to come up with better products or services. But we need to embrace what is happening in terms of technology, what is happening in terms of different segments or functions or categories coming up in their domain, and bring it all together for our clients. And it is, it goes without saying that we have to get into the skin of our clients and understand how they would think about their business and bring in everything all together for them. And that is why we become a trusted advisor for them. If we stop embracing, perhaps they'll have different functions and different experts sitting in different corners of their offices doing their work, but that's where consulting adds value, that they provide an end-to-end solution and stitch that story together seamlessly for clients, and that is why that value is attributed to us.
One advantage of coming last is that you can seem intelligent by just regurgitating what everyone else has said. So one of the simplest things is to connect. Consulting is a very, very rewarding and rich career, right? because it allows you to straddle across multiple industries, which a line function in a particular corporate might not give, right? But to prepare for that, there are the 4 pillars, and some of them have been spoken in other words by my co-panelists. So there is a deep domain expertise, which you will not have on day 0, but over a 15-year path to becoming a partner, you will eventually have it. But you'll have to fake it till you make it, because you need to actually keep on this lifelong process of learning about a particular industry and not just show up in a suit in a client meeting, right? You'll be on the 3rd row as you start your career. In about 5 years, you'll be on the 1st row making the presentations. And in about 10 years, 15 years, you'll be leading the business, right? So that's the career path you have. I think all my panelists will agree. You will have to have this multifunctional ability to say that I will understand the business. I am not a supply chain consultant. I may have graduated in supply chain or may have graduated in general management, but I need to understand the business as I go in. That's one. Second is you can't ignore technology. Technology is not something you can push under the carpet. It's not something second class. You have to have technology. And that technology is not Excel. It is AI and plus and the other things that are there. Third is collaboration. My friend Dipayan has said that you need to collaborate. You can't be jealous of the other consultant. Leave your jealousy behind. You have to collaborate internally. You have to collaborate with your clients, because these are the same people who are going to grow with you in your careers, in parallel careers. They are going to become partners. They are going to become your clients, right? You need to have that lifelong pattern of collaborating. And fourth is relationships. You can't write a stinker mail. You can't push off people. You have to have nice, pleasant personality if you have to be in consulting, right? Now, with all of that, you need to be a great storyteller. Because what do consultants do? It's not that we are inventing something. We are only bringing structure into ambiguity. Please remember this. And to be able to do that to the highest levels, you need to be a good storyteller. What have I done now?
Thank you.
You need to be a storyteller with complex facts, simple facts that appeals to different levels. The CEO, the board, the mid-level management who are going to be really, giving you a hard time to get the solutions through, and the junior people who will be your friends. But you need to be able to push the message across using these 4 pillars, and to be doing it consistently and be sharpening your tools forever, in your consulting career. And I can assure you, it's fairly rewarding, intellectually as well as otherwise.
Okay, so now this is the most difficult part, right? You've got to follow absolutely 4 rockstar consultants and then decide from the 20 I had, how do I keep eliminating and still keep the last 3.
You are a storyteller.
So let me actually, picking up the cue from what Abhijit mentioned from a storytelling standpoint. Let me tell you what my hiring partner, and Sharat Bansal was the person who hired me into PwC. I came from a very different background. He saw my CV 30 minutes. He said, look, genuinely, if I give you a feedback, the CV actually looks like an absolute piece of whatever he said that. But I have, said, but somewhere in my feeling, I think things will work out. And he said, amongst the many other things that my panelist said, he said, I have 2 expectations of you, right, in the firm that I'm running. And this is, Sharat Bansal, if you Google him, you will find there's absolute doyen in consulting out there, right? One he told me was, don't get into any politics in my firm out here. Okay, I hate it because you are dealing with people, you will be exposed to a lot of information and all those things. So keep politics out. Okay, so that is the first thing he said. Okay. The second thing, and which I kind of always remember, and I keep telling this to the new generation or every batch that I interact with, is I need people with attitude. Because what Sharat told me was, I can bridge a capability gap, but I find it very difficult to bridge an attitude gap. So if you come to me with the right attitude, I think you will survive and you will do well in any firm. But attitude over capability was the first mantra he told me. So that kind of stuck around for a long, long time. There are 2 other traits that kind of I've picked up as, or I would leave behind for some of you to think about. One is, it's also in the head, and be very clear, team. There is a significant amount of expectations from the Indian diaspora and Indians at large. Okay, and you go and talk to people outside. You go and talk to your any market, any firm outside, any leaders outside. The expectations, if you're coming from India, your ability to handle complexity, your ability to be far more culturally sensitive, your ability to kind of come out and handle extreme difficult analytical positions, and by far goes without saying your technological acumen is by far the highest when it comes to general peers in the global industry world out there. So somewhere I think carry that responsibility, because you are, and somewhere you will define how a future Indian consultant, okay, will be pursued by the stakeholders and the other consulting firms that you deal with in the global arena. So that's my second point in terms of carrying and global listening out there. And the last point, excuse me, and this is something which I tell for future. So we have this structured evaluation when you become a partner and all those things out there. Trust me, guys, you got to respect what I call the bullshit meter of the person sitting in front of you. Okay, you genuinely need to respect and understand everyone has what is called as a bullshit meter. You can survive with it possibly for the first 2 minutes. You might survive for the next 15 minutes. After the 15th minute, you will immediately pick up this guy is giving you actually the goalie or he's actually meaning the right thing out there. So respect that bullshit meter of anyone you're talking to, and therefore being authentic is something that I would leave behind as the last message from a trade standpoint for any consultant. So just being authentic will take you far more, and everything else that the panelists talked about stays with you from a success standpoint.
Lovely. Thank you so much. I want to open up the panel for questions, if there are any questions. There's a microphone floating around here. Anybody can ask a question. Feel free to do so.
Good evening, everyone. So my question is...
You announce your name.
Yeah, sorry. I'm Saurabh, and my question is that in the world of management consulting, strategic thinking is one of the core skills that people should have. So what is your advice to develop and inculcate those and imbibe those skills into us so that we can be ready to transition into this industry?
Is it anybody in particular or is it general?
It's open to the board.
Okay.
So if I could just pick one thing, you said management consulting. Let's reframe the question a little bit. The boundaries between management consulting and technology consulting are totally blurred now. So there is no management consulting versus technology consulting. Providing deep industry insights also need insights from how technology can enable it. Now, coming to your question, which is how we can build that mindset of bringing in those strategic insights into it. You need to take a very, very close look at what is happening at macroeconomic level and also how it is impacting the kind of products and services are coming up. Solutions are completely unexpected. So if you think, going through case studies, and we all have done that in our B school days, it helps. I'm not saying it doesn't help, but the era is of, completely unexpected solutions. So being creative and bringing in that critical thinking mindset, building that mindset, thinking about something which doesn't exist. And if I may quote how Steve Jobs put it once upon a time, he said, people don't know what do they want. So we are going to design it. And that is, I believe, is the true consulting mindset, not just sensing what our clients need, but coming up with our recommendation and telling them that this is what we believe is going to work for your organization, and this is what will turn around what you are looking at as your goal. So,
okay, if I may just add on to this, your strategic mindset evolves. No college can exactly teach you; they can only teach you the steps to reach that platform. Right? Very simply, 3 things. You have to invest in continuous learning. Invest in a Harvard Business Review or equivalent subscription. Don't think your learning ends as you graduate from here. That gives you the leading edge of what's happening in the industry. Invest in understanding how the macroeconomic trends are moving. Invest in The Economist or something equivalent like that. And thirdly is your empathy for putting yourself in your customer's shoes. Because A plus B, what you learn from Harvard Business Review and The Economist, and you punch it together nicely with your intelligent mind, needs to be balanced with the EQ, the emotional quotient or the empathy of understanding what is the situation the client is in and what will work, right? So it's not a mathematics you're solving. And the third point, the EQ, is what storytelling is all about. You may know all the answers, but how much you tell, when you tell, in what fashion you tell, is all defined around all of this knowledge that you curate, right? So strategic thinking evolves, and over a period of time, you will realize that you are thinking like the client before the client has actually thought about it, right? That's when you become a strategic thinker. So it's a journey.
Next question.
Hi everyone, my name is Samujjal. Good evening. My question is to Anoop. So Anoop, I was part of HPI as a contingent worker for about 1.5 years back in 2017. So my question to you is that we usually speak about consulting when in terms of, let's say, Accenture, KPMG, or PwC, or the MBBs. We talk about we consult a firm and try to solve their issues. But there's another consulting word which exists in organizations like HP, where you are consulting another business unit, part of the same organization. And there are a lot of kind of conflicts there, because every business unit has its own goal. And, even though they're part of the same organization, it seems that, kind of they're competing with each other. So how do we as a consultant then survive in that environment, and what kind of skills do we need to build up to be a part of those kind of roles? Okay, so good to know that you were with HPI. So I think see, first is that this is how organizations are designed. Okay, they're designed with keeping redundancies in mind. They're designed with keeping those constructive tensions in mind, because if they do not have, then the purpose of those respective micro departments will not exist at all. Now, coming to the question of survival, I don't think we should live for survival. It is to make sure that we do not survive, but we celebrate our living. Okay, and when I say that, that means that what you need to work upon is that you need to be very enthusiastic. You should be a good listener, and you should be able to collaborate with people. So and from a consulting viewpoint, see, just think about your own personal lives, right? Each of us will have a consultant in our own lives, a friend, a girlfriend, a boyfriend, or some relatives, a father, mother, somebody, right? Why do we go to them? We go to them not because they can just spin up some great advice like magic, because of the reasons of having, we feel that they have the right understanding about us. It is the same way that within the organizations, when you are playing the role of a consultant, or when you're playing the role of a consultant to the outside world, which is to your customers, how do you establish that trust that exists between you and them? Because if they have that trust, and most of my co-panelists will agree, that in consulting, the good part is that once you have landed up with a client, the journey is a multi-year journey. It is not a 6 months or 1 year or 2 year journey, because you become a trusted advisor to your customers, and these journeys typically last over decades. So empathy, all those points that all my co-panelists said, okay, that plus trust is the important element that you need to make sure that it happens, and people, your customers or internal stakeholders, they need to trust you about what they're asking, and authenticity will enhance that trust in the overall ecosystem.
In the interest of time, you can have one more question.
Hello. Hi everyone, good evening. My name is Pukhraj. My question is to Abhijit sir. So you have mentioned, like, we had like good discussion around AI and how things are changing in consultancy. Like you mentioned, like we like having good knowledge about Excel or macro, operating macro, presentation skills and data analytics is like a passing thing. But also you mentioned like a person should have a good flavor of AI as well. And on the other hand, you mentioned like we are still in the nascent stage of AI. So like for us, like who are open, like coming up for those positions in future, what all is expected from us? Like in what stage or like what aspect of that particular AI thing we should learn or we should know when we are applying for such positions?
So AI is not particular one tool. It's a model that is applicable on everything that we are doing. So I don't think you can learn a whole lot of things like you could learn an Excel or a PowerPoint. You could learn all of them while you are still in college. The idea is to have the ability to to adapt and learn those things in your particular areas of work as you reach. For example, you become an HR consultant, right? In a particular consulting firm. There, instead of using a standard HRMS tool that was being used, say, over the years, you would probably have an HRMS.ai tool, which will do a lot of the assessment and analysis, in a very different way than what you are used to using Excel macros. Now, that's a skill you have to learn quickly on the job. Your next project might be in supply chain consulting. Very different world, very different use cases. But the ability to run the right queries and be able to extract the power of the engine, which could be either LLMs or SLMs, whatever, and to be able to harness that is what is important, right? So when we were young, coming out of college, being able to do a programming was a great skill. And people who had that skill got into slightly better, landing positions off from college. It is exactly the same now. If you know a little bit of it, you'll be able to use that to get entry. But that's just the entry. So if your question was about what all should I learn, and I could give you a page of it, it will still not be sufficient. You should have the acumen to learn at every opportunity for every project, because the underlying element of how to use AI will still be the same, right? You will just use it in different platforms differently. And the list of AI tools is ever growing. It will grow. For every area, there will be scores, dozens of those tools and options available, right? So you should learn the applicability of AI and how to use it and be able to use it instantly in every occasion, right? So whenever there's an assessment, giving it, a summary of this, whenever there's an assessment that is given up to you as a junior consultant in the team, don't run for an Excel sheet. Run for the AI, because that is where you will get richer insights, faster insights, deeper impact. And that's where you'll, of course, learn. And that's how you should address it. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay, I think, as I said, in the interest of time, we will have, that was the last question we had. What I just want to summarize in just one sentence, the entire panel discussion that we've actually had, and of course, the keynote that Prasad gave us earlier, is that consulting as, a place where you want to work and the work you want to do requires you to be a lifelong learner. You cannot say, I know consulting, because everything around you is changing forever. And you have to be in the leading edge. You've got to be ahead of your clients. Otherwise, what advice are you going to give them in the first place? So you've got to run faster than your clients are running, and then be able to help your clients achieve what the client is wanting to achieve. Okay, so keep that in mind. If you want to be in consulting, that's the mantra. Keep learning and keep ahead of the curve. All right. Thank you very much.
Before I mention some key takeaways, I would like to share what gives me some relief is when Miss Maneesha says, experience has no alternative, human interaction is going nowhere, bring any amount of AI. So the relief to me is my job is still safe. And to wrap up, I can say that it goes without saying that as budding consultants, learning and upskilling has to be at a very fast pace, unlearning and learning. Business models are changing, disruptions are happening, from PPTs to AI-enabled videos. And the thing is that use cases are still need to be discovered. There are ethical implications, free access to data, which is the more scary part. And in the ESG space, the challenge is, and the bigger question is, companies are interested in net zero for the company or for the industry. These remain as questions to be sought. So throughout the day, friends, we have been talking about bots, but I'm really happy that relationships, empathy, collaboration, embrace, storytelling, attitude, and cultural sensitivity, and also authenticity are still in the picture. At this point in time, I am reminded of a powerful Sanskrit quote. Vidya Vinayen Shobhate. Education manifests as humility, a key quality for responsible leadership. As we bring this insightful two-day conclave to an end, I would like to take a moment to express my heartfelt gratitude to everyone who contributed to its success. First and foremost, a sincere thanks to our distinguished guests who graced us with their presence and shared their valuable insights today for the conclave. A big round of applause for our guests. To all the participants, thank you for your active engagement and your enthusiasm throughout the conclave. Your questions, ideas, and interactions have made this gathering vibrant and dynamic. I would also like to extend my deepest appreciation to the faculty members, the conclave team, the entire Samavesh team who played a crucial role in organizing this event. As we navigate the evolving landscape of business and technology, let us carry forward the insights and connections made during this conclave. Thank you once again for being a part of this remarkable journey. We look forward to seeing you at future events. Safe travel and best wishes to all. I would like to invite Prateek and Surya to present a token of appreciation to our guests. May I request our panel members for a group photograph, please?